There's a time and a place for erect nipples, but the back of a Seattle police car definitely isn't it. Hey y'all, my name is Nat. I hope you're having a terrific day today, and for this video, we are going to be doing an author taste test of Jennifer Hillier. Alright, so before we get into anything bookish, make sure to hit like and subscribe down below, as well as tell me in the comments, have you read from this author? Do you enjoy her? Do you hate her? Let's talk about it. Alright, so if you're new here, my author taste test is a series on my channel in which I give authors 2 chances. If I dislike both of them, chances are I'm not going to read anything from them ever again. But if I love both of them, this tells me I need to check out more from this author. For an author to be considered for a taste test in the first place, I have to have more than 2 books on their TBR, and one that I've heard a lot of positive things about is Jennifer Hillier. In fact, I think at this point I currently have 5 books of hers on my TBR, so I knew she was the perfect option for one of these. I'm gonna tell y'all right now, this video got started and then it got pushed off and pushed off and pushed off. I'm filming this intro afterwards because the first clip is almost 2 years before the second clip. Yeah. But going into this video, I knew one of the books I was going to be reading from her was Things We Do in the Dark because I already owned a copy of it. This book starts following Paris, who is married to a much older man that is quite famous, and she is found by police covered in blood, holding a weapon over her husband's dead body. But somehow the chance she'll go to prison for this is not what's concerning her. Instead, she's worried about her own past being unearthed by all of this attention she's getting from the media. At the same time, we also have Ruby, a woman who has recently been released from prison for her own crime, and she knows who Paris actually is. So things were definitely getting very complicated. Along with that one, the other book I read from this author was The Butcher, which was the first book of hers that I'd put on my TBR. This one is following 3 people who are all somehow connected to this serial perpetrator that is known as the Butcher. The police chief who caught him 30 years ago, the police chief's grandson, and then his girlfriend, who is actually an investigative journalist that believes the Butcher is responsible for her mother's death, except it happened 3 years after the Butcher is supposed to have died. I'd heard so many positive things about that one, so I was really excited to go into it. But I do want to give a forewarning on it. This book has some really heavy bits. I mean, Things We Do in the Dark isn't exactly a light, fun read, but The Butcher, really dark. Like, if you need trigger warnings, please check them out because this book gets pretty graphic. But with that though, let's go ahead and roll the vlog so you can see how I felt about this author's work. Hey guys! So I've hit the halfway point into Things We Do in the Dark by Jennifer Hillier. I don't have any notes. I'm just filming this off the cuff, which is never a really good idea. It's always very rambly. But the start of this book does kick off quite quickly. Right out of the get-go, I was intrigued. I was like, all right, I'm in, let's go. I'll just read you the first line because, I mean, it does start off quite shocking. There's a time and a place for erect nipples, but the back of a Seattle police car definitely isn't it. You know? Probably true. While this starts off with a bang in that first chapter, after that it slows down a lot. It is very procedural style. There's so much exposition around our main character, her relationship, who her husband is, the whole background of his fame and how he's like come back into the limelight, the weird relationship with the lawyer. There's a lot explained. Then we're told this like dramatic tie-in that Paris has to Ruby Reyes, this murderer in Canada. Once we hit chapter 2, it actually alternates perspectives to this investigative podcaster named Drew, who knew Ruby Reyes's daughter and is going to be doing a podcast around Ruby's abuse of her daughter. Again, there was just a ton of exposition suddenly exploring all this background, who Drew was, what his connection to her was, why he's planning to do this podcast. And like, that's kind of my biggest thing right now, is I just feel like there's a lot of exposition that may possibly be needed later, but at this point, some of it I just don't think is really necessary. There are also occasional chapters where it's like we're seeing a flashback to Ruby's daughter, Joey's background. All of the terrible things that took place while she was living with her mother, and then once her mother was put into prison, her life while she lived with her extended family. There are definitely some dark things happening in those chapters. Some stuff is more alluded to than actually showcased on page, which I do appreciate. My one thing is I just don't understand the perspective of writing those chapters, because some points told as though Drew is reading Joey's diaries and like that's how the story is told. That's not always the case, which is really odd. So it's like, how does he know this perspective? How does he understand all of these things? Just, it's kind of weird, and I almost wonder if like there was a better perspective breakdown that the author could have done to make that flow more seamlessly. On top of that, there was a twist that I knew was coming, and it took so long for the characters to figure that out. And so I just kind of sat here like, have you put it together yet? How about now? How about now? Literally, like, that perfectly happened at the halfway point. Again, all I could think was, seriously, it took you that long? Really? And because of that, I'm very concerned to see what the latter half of this book is gonna be like. Is it gonna continue to drag? Because I mean, like, I'm gonna read it because I want to know. I want those answers. How this played out. Like, I'm gonna have to listen to the audiobook and crank it up to like 3 times speed. Right now, if I had to give an estimated rating, I guess I would say like 3 stars. It's not bad necessarily. The writing style isn't my favorite, and there's like some logic issues I have with it. And then, like I said, the twist was just so predictable. And I don't even think it was really handled in like a shocking way, because again, I put that together so fast. Whenever character puts it together, it's like this evidence was so readily available to you and you never thought to check that. I'm gonna keep reading because it's not bad. It's not worthy of putting it down. I don't know if this is gonna be a new fave. Hey y'all. So I finished out Things We Do in the Dark by Jennifer Hillier. This was a book that I read. It was fine. I do not think this was thrilling at all. I think calling this a thriller is inaccurate. It is more like a mystery. I also think this was incredibly predictable, and just the writing setup of it was not a favorite for me. There is so much time dedicated to the backstory. I mean, I kind of expected everything that happened in the backstory to take place. None of the twists in that timeline shocked me at all. And it was so repetitive, not in a way where the exact same information would be told to us, but where we would have a bit of information revealed to us, and then it would be confirmed by somebody else, then it would be confirmed by another person, only for the different timeline where it's revealed in this really dramatic way. And it's just like, we got that. It's okay. You don't have to do it again. And that kept happening, so much so that by like 70% in, I was just skimming this and I never felt like I missed anything. I don't know if the author just led me to the answers really easily or if the story itself was just predictable. Honestly, I don't think the change in perspective at part 2 was necessary. I guess it allowed for an exploration of background that was done in a different way rather than another character just giving a giant info dump, but it still wasn't really necessary. And then the flashback chapters that took place in both characters' perspectives were really confusing because they would kind of ride the line between whose head we were in. None of the characters stood out across the board. I sympathized for Paris, but that was about it. There was nothing that really allowed me to connect with her in order to root for her. Like, this was just really slow and meandering of a thriller, and honestly, I think it had an unsatisfying ending. This was 3 stars, and that's me being nice. I'm sad. Here's hoping that the next book goes better. Hey y'all, I look like an egg, but I need to film this update because I want to keep reading this book in the morning. I have hit the halfway point into The Butcher by Jennifer Hillier, and I am really liking it. Though I will say, I think this is one of those books you really should go in not knowing a lot. Even reading the summary on Goodreads, I think kind of leads you to a conclusion that's like just a hair too much to go into this book. But we're alternating perspectives between 3 different characters who are all tied to this serial perpetrator. And I think my favorite so far is definitely Sam. She is the journalist. She is the one writing a true crime novel about this person. I really enjoy her perspective because it actually feels like she is a good investigator. She has a good head on her shoulders, but she's also emotionally invested into the case. So she's doing everything she can to prove this while also trying to figure out, who was the actual butcher, and showcase actual decent evidence to put valid doubt on the police's original investigation and the person that they originally caught for the crimes. Like I said, I'm very much enjoying her perspective. Her chapters do sort of feel like listening to Serial, the true crime podcast. As for the other perspectives, I wouldn't say I like them, but I do think they showcase how good Hillier is creating each of these characters, and also how she is evolving and sort of devolving at the same time each of them. It is really interesting, like how you meet each of these characters. We've got the police chief who originally captured this person and then his grandson, and how you originally meet them and how each layer is peeled back on their characters as we get further into the story is so interesting. The little shift in each of their characters as the story continues, the questions and doubts that's bringing to mind for me as a reader as to like where the plot is going to go. Because when this book starts and you hit that first reveal, like you think it's going to go one way, and then it doesn't take long for that to start changing little bit by little bit. And like I said, I think Hillier is doing a great job of kind of evolving the story off of that, laying little seeds of doubt for you as to like whether or not these characters are going to make the right choices or the wrong choices. I will say one element I don't love about the story overall is this weird like romance aspect of it. Like I said, we have the three main characters. We've got the police detective, we have his grandson, and then we have his grandson's girlfriend, who is the true crime reporter. With the grandson and the girlfriend, obviously, you know, they're a couple. There's going to be a romantic element there, but there's like this weird love triangle jealousy element that just feels so unnecessary. As I've continued reading, I am starting to wonder a little bit if there's a reason for that, but it always feels like it's getting brought up at the most inopportune times where it just doesn't seem natural. It feels like Hillier's trying to work it into the scene. Hey, Sammy. Go on. Very much enjoying this. Like I said, I do think this is a book you should go in not really knowing a lot, because that's what I did and I'm having a fantastic time. I'm not gonna lie to you, it has been a minute since I read the first book for this video, but I do think I am enjoying this more than I did Things We Do in the Dark by the halfway point. I'm so intrigued on how this story is going to round out. That's why I needed to film this update, because like I said, I want to keep reading this book in the morning. Hey guys, so it's actually the next day after I filmed that prior update, because I ended up binging the rest of this book because it was that good. I gotta say, Hillier really surprised me with how great this thriller was. I truly do think it comes down to the phenomenal character work that is done here across all three perspectives. The writing in every single one of their perspectives does feel distinct and they feel very separate from each other, even though you can see how like the interactions between the characters kind of like impact each of them throughout the story, which is really cool. Especially when it comes to Matt, the grandson's perspective. I think the evolution slash like devolving that he goes through in the entirety of this book is just so well presented. The little things you watch throughout his perspective, but also in the interactions other characters have with him, to see the changes in his character throughout the story. So good. It's so well done. I would really only say I rooted for one perspective in particular, but even with that character, as the story continues, like they do start to become a little bit unlikable as well. And so I think this is a great showcasing of unlikable characters that, you know, you're supposed to not like them, but then also having an unlikable character that you can still root for. And obviously, like the juxtaposition between those characters and then the dramatic irony that goes on throughout the story is just really great and reinforces like your ability to root for this character, to figure out what's going on, and then also to bring down other characters. So good. So good. I also feel like Hillier did a really good job of slowly introducing the more depraved elements of this book, because it's a thriller, but it does have some really heavy topics going on. I think I mentioned in my first update, even though really dark stuff is getting talked about, it's kind of sterile. Like you're looking at it, there's this very scientific perspective that kind of allows you to separate from these dark topics. But as the book continues on, you actually start to see some of these terrible things happening in the story through some of these characters' perspectives. Hillier brought in the gore and the really scary stuff at just the right time. She built up to it very well. Like there's some very dark shit in this book. If you need trigger warnings, definitely check them out, because there's some really heavy things that take place on page through a character's eyes. I will say one of those towards the end of the book, I don't really think was necessary. I think we could have still had everything else that happened in the story to lead you to that conclusion. I don't think this final element really changed my thoughts at all. But that said, I do understand why Hillier chose to utilize that. I think it would have been okay without it, honestly. I will still maintain that my biggest issue with this book is the romance aspect of the story. I understand why there is some aspect of a romance in the book because the main tying point of two characters together is that they're in a relationship, but there's this like sort of love triangle with lots of jealousy that keeps springing up and causing drama that I just did not care about. That was not what kept me reading. What kept me reading was the crime and the investigating. That just was very irritating, and especially because there's other interpersonal drama that's happening in the book that was much more interesting than this, like, again, weird love triangle thing with jealousy that kept cropping up. I just knew no matter how the romance was going to end, I was going to be annoyed by it, and I was correct. I didn't care one way or another because this was not why I was here for this book. Sometimes I don't mind romances in like a horror or a thriller book, but you need to convince me of a romance between the characters, and I just did not feel convinced in any way, shape, or form with any of the romances. It also felt like Hillier was always bringing that element up at like the most inopportune times, so it felt very unnatural. It really seemed like she was shoehorning it in to further this narrative she was trying to do. That bugged me. That did stop me from giving it a 5-star, but overall this was still a really strong 4-star. I really did like this, and this is definitely going to be the book that is going to have me coming back to this author. So on that note, for an author taste test, would I read from Jennifer Hillier again? Absolutely. I definitely will. I know she has a fairly decent backlist. I am pretty sure Jar of Hearts is already on my list. I think the Creep duology has also been very intriguing to me. But if you have any recommendations from her other work that you have read, please let me know in the comments down below what you think I should pick up next. All in all, this was a pretty good author taste test. So on that note, that is it for today, y'all. Thank you so much for coming to my channel. I really appreciate it. Make sure to hit like and subscribe down below. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, leave me the knife emoji in the comments. I have all my socials as well as a few ways you can support me linked in the description. I come out with videos on Monday and Friday, but until then, I hope you continue to have a terrific day. Love you, bye!